Hello again and welcome to another video. I'm Kate Sculpts and today I have decided to make ECLIPSE from Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin. I'm a big fan of Five Nights at Freddy's and have been for quite a few years now, so it's great to finally make something from it. I'm super excited to start this one, so let's not waste any time and get straight into it. I started off as I usually do by making a foil base. I kind of wrap some foil around and then curve the edges so that it's sort of an oval kind of shape. It's a little bit big right now, so I do go back later and make it smaller. I whack the clay to make sure that it's nice and soft so I don't hurt my hands when I'm rolling it out. I get it to a nice thickness and then I add the clay glue on top, making sure to spread it evenly using my clay glue paintbrush, which is completely full of the glue by now and it's never coming back. I then coat it with the clay, fold over the edges and make sure that both sides are completely covered. After smoothing out the seams, I start to work on the body by cutting some metal wire that's quite thick into the right length that I want. It was a bit hard deciding kind of how big I wanted it, considering that the base I kind of wanted it to fit on nicely, and then I made the base too big compared to the body, so I had to shorten the base. But anyways, I attached these 3 pieces of metal wire with some masking tape. If you haven't been able to tell by now, I suck at armature. It's just the most disgusting part of the entire process. Wire is annoying to bend, my pliers don't work, and then I get frustrated and just start slathering a bunch of masking tape on top, and it holds and it works, so you know, it's fine. I then make sure to add some clay on top. Now, ECLIPSE's legs, one of them is its full size and then the other one kind of is broken sort of in half with a bunch of metal wire coming out of it. You'll see what I mean. So I only do, you know, the top half of that leg as it should be. I do make sure to keep layering up the clay to make sure it's as smooth as possible, even though he is a bit ruined. Make sure to bulk out the chest as well and also the rest of the body to make sure that there's enough clay there and to get his general shape right. I do make his legs quite long and skinny compared to how it usually looks in the game, but honestly I think it kind of makes it look a bit spookier in my opinion. He has a gash at the side of his chest there, which is why I'm carving that bit out. Then I get some more metal wire for the arms, make sure to bend them in the right way. One of his arms is going to be up, sort of waving, and the other one's going to be down, kind of creepily, just, you know, I don't know. That one is going to be leaning down like that. After attaching the arms into place, I make sure to cut down a slit in some clay and attach it to the arms to make sure that they're all kind of the same thickness. It's better to add more clay than you need and be able to take it away than not add enough and have to add some more on later on. Once I've added it and smoothed it out, making sure that the shoulders are kind of nice and big enough, I start working on the head. I add a little bit of foil on first and then, of course, the clay on top. It doesn't look round or nearly big enough at the moment, so I make sure to take it off the body so that I can work on it without having to worry about smushing any other details. I then round it out by adding some clay around the edges and also kind of on the front as its front face panel. I then realise that the neck is in the completely wrong place, so I have to take it out and attach it to the back of the head instead of kind of going through it like a normal neck would. This isn't a normal creature, so it doesn't have a normal neck. And then just keep shaping out the head using some more clay wherever I need it, like around here, so that the back has a little bit more definition, as well as attaching the metal wire on completely with some more clay. Then to work on the face, I start carving out the mouth just by using my knife and pressing into it till I have the right shape. Then on kind of the sun half of the face, I make sure to cut out the right shape and smooth it out so that you get that raised area that is on ECLIPSE. I then keep defining the face some more, making sure to add the nose and the eyes and the big gap for the mouth so that I can add the teeth later on. To do the teeth, I just kind of need to cut out tiny little squares, just very thinly, and then I attach them using the knife to make sure that I get them in the right place. I then of course add his little circular cheeks above his mouth to kind of bring a bit more life into the face as well. And of course when I've smoothed them out enough, I work on the eyes, putting the little balls in and making sure that the one on the right side has kind of a little bit in the middle, that little bit. And then I start to work on the mechanical side of the face, which has been a bit more ruined than the other side. Using this sharp little spiky tool, I make sure to carve out as many little cracks and splits as I can into the head, trying to follow what reference I was using as close as possible, not just adding random cracks everywhere thinking it would look good. Then you see me add a little bit of clay to this corner of the mouth. This is because these teeth that I added in earlier are actually kind of under the main face, sort of on the endoskeleton, and that part of the face still had some of his main front teeth still on. Then working on his hat, I make it just a little bit flimsy, making a cone shape, adding it on, and then adding this little bit of clay around it for the lining, whatever you call it. Of course, the back of the faceplate also has a bit of mechanical stuff. I didn't really do much with it. I didn't really follow anything specifically. Then I use a little bit of foil just to make sure that I can hold the face in place while I start working on the little sun rays that come out the side of its face. Again, making sure that there are cracks down the side, I add them on and then smooth them out using my silicone tools. Some of them are a little bit more cracked than others. Then using my little knife as crudely as possible, I scrape some clay so that I have this sort of ragged, sort of damaged look to the end of this leg here. And of course my sharper silicone tool needs to split the arm from the main body. The forearm also is a little bit thicker right at the start of it, so I add more clay and then split it, as, you know, he needs the area for the joints. To start working on the hands, I add 2 pieces of clay and kind of squish them between the main piece of wire, and then to make the fingers, I use Cosclay, which is bendable after it's been baked, so that if you accidentally touch it or whack it, it's a lot less likely to just snap off. I'd say that, but you know, 3 of the fingers did snap off after I baked it, so that's great. I did need to use some super glue. But to make the fingers, I roll them with my sharper silicone tool to give that little ball in between. That's sort of like the ball joint for the fingers. I only add 1 when there probably should be 2, but that's fine. And this hand is going to be waving, so the fingers kind of get a bit more bent as you get closer to the pinky, and also a bit shorter too. After that hand, I start working on the second hand. Of course, it's kind of that spooky position that I was talking about, kind of reaching out, kind of. Then, you might think I'm crazy for this, but using my knife, I actually cut off the hands. I do need to be very delicate to make sure that I don't damage them, but after they're cut off, I stand them up like this so that I can bake them. This just means that I can keep doing other details later on without worrying that I'll damage the fingers. On the trouser legs, of course, I add these little folded bits at the bottom, which, you know, would be kind of the way fabric would move on it, even though it's not made out of fabric, I doubt. You know, so it's an animatronic. Then using some wire, I wrap it around this piece of wire, because on the main body there is, you know, that bit of exposed wire under the leg. Now this part was a bit difficult. I used some Cosclay around this really thin piece of wire, kind of wrapping it around. This is to create that sort of mesh look to it. I did order some mesh wire and it was not bending and not correct, and I got very frustrated, so I ended up just doing it myself without having to use mesh wire, and it ended up looking a lot better than I thought it would. This part of the chest also has a big gash in it where you can see the the endoskeleton underneath. Then working on the base, I tried to make it kind of look like a daycare. Now, of course I do have references of how the daycare looks, but I made it kind of my own. Half of it was lines and then the other half was squares. You'll see later on. I then start to make the barrels. Well, they're probably music boxes is probably what you call them, but the things that you use to distract Sun and Moon in Security Breach. I make these so that Eclipse has something to stand on, because being supported by only one leg means it's a lot more likely to just fall over. And then keep working on the base. Like I said, these are the lines that I was talking about. I make sure to smoothen them down and then give them, you know, that bit between. This part's a little bit more raised. And then the second part will be the squares. So I just put lines diagonally, not diagonally, horizontally and vertically. And then also, after I've done that, I make sure to kind of round out the corners of each square to make them look a bit more fun, not as jagged or rigid. Once the squares look all nice and rounded, I add some of my clay glue to the bottom of the barrels and stick them down right where I want the legs to kind of stand on it. Using the Cosclay, I actually make these little ruffles that can go around the bottom of the leg where you would see one of those ruffles. I do more of these later on. I also attach the head with some more clay glue, making sure that it fits in the hole and then securing it in with some more clay. Again, making more of those little ruffles. I then divide the top half of the chest to the torso, just by adding a simple little line and also adding these kind of shoulder areas that they have. They have it on, I think, a lot of the Glamrock animatronics. Then I attach the hands, leaving a slight gap where you can see the metal wire between the arm and the hands. This is because I need that extra space to wrap this little ribbon around, which you can find on Sun, Moon and Eclipse. Of course, it's a bit ruined, like all the other parts of the sculpture, so I do it on both hands, making sure that it's long enough and then cutting off the excess. Then going back in with that sharp tool, I keep making those little cracks all over the body, the chest, the torso, the arms, not the legs just yet because the legs are actually quite smooth compared to the rest of the body. Again, I do try and follow sort of a reference for this, trying to get all the gashes kind of in the right place. That's harder for the back side because I couldn't really find any references of the back of Eclipse, but that's fine, I can always just wing it. Then I attach it to the base. This is what I meant by having that raised leg stand on top of a barrel. It kind of looks like his leg's just gotten stuck inside of it, but that's okay. I then shape out this clay so that it looks like his shoe. Also adding the little metal wire, not the metal wire, the little laces on top and the little ball and everything else. I then do start working on the belt, just wrapping it around, making sure that it's the right thickness, and then again going in with those ruffles. Usually the ruffles kind of go most of the way around, but they're a bit broken again, so I only do some. Then using some loose Cosclay without any metal wire in between, I wrap it around this mesh bit, just to make it look like the metal caging that you can see on Eclipse. I do break some of it, make sure that it looks quite rough and ragged. Then I put it in the oven. However, you'll see here and here that it's very damaged. This is because it fell over in the oven. It tore half of the barrel in two and then the shoe got very damaged, but I fixed it. Luckily it only fell over in the first 2 minutes, so it wasn't too hard by that time. But then, of course, it's baked, so I start painting. I have to do multiple coats of both of these colours because my paint just wasn't painting correctly and it was very watery for some reason. But in the end, I was able to go over the top of these squares with a lighter shade of blue to make them kind of stand out. You might be thinking, this is weird because it's from Ruin Eclipses, so in Ruin everything was a lot darker and more dingy and a bit messy. This is only the beginning. Now, you'll see as I go through this that the way that I paint it is I paint it as it would have looked like before it got all ruined and dirty, and then at the end I go in and just completely mess with it and make it look very disgusting. Painting these barrels was definitely quite a challenge, trying to get all of the detail in there. I didn't manage to get all of the detail in there, but it still looks pretty alright. I start off with a yellow coat for the legs, or the leg, as the legs are two different colours. The top of this leg is actually still, that kind of blue colour for Moon. I only paint that half of the leg up top, even though it should be further down than that, and I finish at the end. I don't know what I'm saying. Then I go in with this kind of orangey, red-ish kind of colour and then paint the lines on. It's definitely quite difficult trying to get them to look all good. Then this sort of bronzy gold colour I paint all over the area up top, which is supposed to be metal. Just anywhere I can find except for the ruffled areas. This is just to give it kind of a dark undertone for when I paint the lighter metallic colours on top. Of course, this ruffle down here is a little bit red. And he has a little moon on his shoe. Now, the sun sort of half of the face is this creamy metallic colour, so I paint all over that as well as the body as well. You know, the arms, half of the chest, and of course the hands, but not doing the fingers either. This metal cage is also the same colour as the undertone. Then I paint these little stars on his trousers. It was definitely very difficult and I did screw up quite a few times. Every time I screwed up I just went over with some water quickly, wiped it off and then kept going with the stars. Again, they're not perfect, but you won't really be able to see them very much by the end, so it doesn't matter too bad. Then I go in with this even darker colour than the one I used first, just getting into all of those cracks. It's quite watered down, so I can remove any excess with some tissue. It does get a little bit messy at some points, so I just go over with the lighter colours on top again. Then painting his kind of sun bits that come out the side, and also his eyes. One is red, one is that sort of lighter colour that you see before. His hat is also the same colour as his trousers. I make sure to paint all of the ribbons that you can find all over his body, this sort of reddish kind of colour. I think there is a variant between Sun and Moon, one is the blue and then one is red, but I'm not sure. I did them all red. Then the barrels have 4 lines in that middle bit, but I did 2 because I didn't want to do more than that because it's difficult. And also sort of musical instruments. Again, it looks messy, but you won't really be able to tell by the end of it. It did look okay at some points though, so I don't really mind too much. This is what I mean by going in with, you know, a dirty colour and making it look all very messy. This is a dry brushing technique, so, you know, there's not a lot of paint on my brush so that it doesn't just completely coat the whole thing, and I just gently whack it everywhere. It's quite a fluffy brush, so it's able to make it look quite, you know, similar to how dirt would look. I try and get it in as many places as possible, some places being a lot more dirty than others, which is okay. But again, just trying to follow the reference and make it look as close to how I view Eclipse. And the final touch is I add some gloss over the eyes. And with that, Eclipse is completely finished. I'm a giant fan of how this one came out, especially since I have actually done things from Five Nights at Freddy's in the past with Plushtrap sitting on his little chair and also a little toy Foxy. Not toy Foxy, but you know what I mean. I've always been a giant fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, so it's definitely fun doing something a little bit bigger than those two. I really hope you enjoyed the video. It's been a great journey. It didn't actually take me too many days, but the video came out a bit later than I thought it would because I had a lot of other stuff to do. So if you did enjoy the video, let me know. And if you want to leave a like, leave a like. If you don't, then don't. And if you also want to see more like this in the future, not just Five Nights at Freddy's stuff, but also other stuff, next week I will be doing something from D&D, then feel free to subscribe as well. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time. Bye bye!